Two men walk on a dirt road, the white dust of Jerusalem still clinging to their sandals. The sun is dropping, on the road to Emmaus, walking through the cooling twilight. Most people assume prophecy in the Bible is a parlor trick. You have to turn to a different prophet. You have to look at a dark bargain recorded 500 years earlier, weighing out a sum of silver that is about to change the economy of the cosmos. 30 pieces of silver. In the ancient Near East, you did not arrive at that specific number by accident. 500 years before the chief priests opened their treasury box to buy a trader, the prophet Zechariah enacts a bizarre piece of performance art. He is instructed to act as a shepherd for a flock marked for slaughter. When the job is done, he asks his employers for his wages. They weigh out exactly 30 silver coins. Zechariah, chapter 11, verse 13. God tells the prophet, "Throw it to the potter the handsome price at which they valued me." The sarcasm in the ancient Hebrew text is dripping. You have to understand the ancient economic scale to feel the sting of this transaction. Under the law of Moses, in Exodus chapter 21, if a roaming ox gores a neighbor's slave to death, the owner of the ox must pay a penalty to compensate for the lost property. The price of a dead slave is 30 shekels of silver. The religious elite of Jerusalem are not just negotiating a bounty, a psychic throwing out vague predictions, hoping a religious movement eventually forces someone to fit the description. But mathematical probability tells a terrifyingly precise story. They are setting a price tag on God himself. The 30 pieces of silver are not a random payout. They are a calculated insult. The creator of the cosmos, the one who stretched out the heavens and laid the foundations of the earth, is appraised by his own people at the exact market rate of dead property. When Judas stands in the dim light of the high priest's courtyard, the smell of charcoal fires drifting through the night air, he asks a simple question: "What are you willing to give me if I deliver him over to you?" Matthew records that they counted out 30 silver coins. You can hear the cold metal clinking against the stone table. You can see the heavy leather pouch being slid across the room. But the precision of the prophetic mold goes even deeper. Zechariah said the silver would be thrown to the potter in the house of the Lord. Hours after the betrayal, Judas realizes the gravity of the innocent blood on his hands. He walks back into the temple. He hurls the coins across the polished stone floor. The priests, refusing to put blood money back into the sacred treasury, use it to buy a graveyard for foreigners, a plot of ruined land called the Potter's Field. The exact amount, the exact location, the exact destination of the money. The vessel is filling up. If a man wanted to fulfill just 8 of these specific ancient promises born in Bethlehem, betrayed by a friend for exactly 30 pieces of silver, rapidly now. And as the silver scatters across the temple floor, the king is being dragged toward a limestone hill outside the city walls. He is pushed to the ground. The rough wood splinters against his torn back. An iron spike is held against his wrist, pressing into the flesh just below the palm. The heavy, metallic thud of a Roman hammer rings out over the screaming crowd. Crucifixion is a uniquely Roman terror. It was engineered by the empire to be the ultimate deterrent, a slow suffocation designed to extract maximum pain and humiliate enemies of the state. But 1,000 years before Rome was a superpower, before the Persians even dreamed of hanging men on trees, before this specific method of execution was even invented, King David sat down with a piece of parchment. Psalm Kaksi Kuminta Kaksi. David writes a song of absolute, suffocating agony. He describes an execution he has never seen, in a method that does not yet exist in the historical record. "I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. A pack of villains encircles me. They pierce my hands and my feet." Jesus does not just fulfill the psalm, he bleeds it. Hanging suspended between the darkened sky and the blood-stained dirt, his chest heaving for a single breath of oxygen, his vocal cords tearing. He cries out the exact opening line of David's ancient song, hands and feet pierced. Garments divided by a gambling game. The odds are 1 in 100 quadrillion. If you took 100 quadrillion silver coins My God, why have you forsaken me?" Below him, 4 Roman guards sit in the white dust. They have taken his outer garments, dividing them into 4 shares. But his inner tunic is seamless, woven in one piece from top to bottom. They do not want to tear it. You can hear the rattle of the dice as they cast lots for the cloth. Fulfilling another line of the song to the exact letter, "They divide my clothes among them and cast lots for my garment." The prophet writes of pierced hands and the Roman hammer swings. The prophet writes of divided garments, and the soldiers gamble in the dirt. The prophet writes of shattered joints and gravity does its brutal work. The cross is not a tragic accident. It is an ancient altar. He is pouring himself into the most agonizing vessel of the Old Testament, the seed. The Zerah promised in the cold shadows of Eden, is finally allowing the serpent to strike his heel, knowing it is the only way, to crush the serpent's head. But this is where modern readers make a fatal mistake. We look at the staggering math. We look at the sheer impossibility of the pierced hands. The 30 silver coins, the exact birthplace. And we turn the greatest rescue mission in the cosmos into a cheap parlor trick. When you treat biblical prophecy like magic, you miss the terrifying reality of what this actually means for you today, and laid them across the state of Texas. They would cover the entire state 2 feet deep. Mark 1 coin red. Blindfold a man. You see the math. You calculate the odds. You marvel at the divine puzzle. You look at the 30 silver coins. You look at the seamless tunic. You treat the cross like an ancient magic trick. And then you close the book. You walk back into your chaos. You walk back into your anxiety. You face the cold tile of a hospital waiting room. You stare at the harsh glare of a medical bill. You sit in the suffocating silence of a dark bedroom at 3 a.m. You wonder if God actually sees you. You wonder if the ancient math matters in your modern mess. This is the modern paralysis. We read the Old Testament like a list of trivia facts. We treat the prophecies like academic trophies. But we miss the heartbeat underneath the ink. We want the prophecies to be a shield. We want the exactness of God to protect us from the pain. But the math does not remove the nails. The fulfilled promises do not bypass the suffering. The blueprint led directly into the darkest day in human history. Prophecy is not a parlor trick to prove God is smart. It is the proof that God is present. It is the guarantee that He does not abandon the timeline. Think about the implications of the silver. Think about the implications of the Roman census. And walk as far as he wants. And tell him to pick up 1 coin. His chance of picking the red coin is the same. If he orchestrated an empire to move a pregnant teenager, if he weighed out the exact coins of a traitor, if he counted the bone joints pulling apart on the wood, then he is not blind to the heavy tears on your face. He is not deaf to the panic tightening your chest. He is meticulously involved in the details of the dark. He maps the trauma. He tracks the grief. He knows the exact weight of what you are carrying, because he carried it first. The fulfilled prophecies are not just historical data points. They are a tether. They anchor your current suffering to a God who holds the pen. The hollow shapes of the Old Testament are still being filled. The cargo is still being loaded into the ship, but Jesus is not done pouring himself into the ancient mold. There is one final vessel waiting on that limestone hill, one last scripture that must be violently fulfilled before the sky goes completely black, and it requires a sponge, a spear, and his very last breath. The sky over Jerusalem has turned a bruised, unnatural black. The temperature drops sharply in the middle of the afternoon, the cold wind whipping the white dust around the base of the wooden beam. Jesus is in the final, agonizing stages of asphyxiation. His lungs are failing. His heart is racing against, as one man fulfilling just 8 of those prophecies by accident. To fulfill 48. The number becomes a figure that exceeds the estimated number. The severe blood loss. And his mouth is completely parched. John, the only disciple standing near the cross, watches as Jesus pushes up against the iron spike in his feet one last time to clear his lungs and pull in a fractured breath of air. John records something stunning in his 19th chapter. He writes, "Later, knowing that everything had now been finished, and so that Scripture would be fulfilled, Jesus said, 'I am thirsty.' He is in blinding, mind-shattering pain. Yet his mind is perfectly lucid. He is scanning the ancient texts. He is looking at the blueprint, 1,000 years earlier. King David penned another agonizing song in Psalm 69, describing an innocent sufferer surrounded by enemies. David wrote, "They put gall in my food and gave me vinegar for my thirst." A Roman soldier hears the gasp from the cross. He reaches for a jar of sour wine, a cheap, highly acidic drink called posca that the legionnaires carried in their daily rations. He plunges a rough sea sponge into the jar. The sharp, pungent smell of vinegar cutting through the heavy, metallic scent of blood hanging in the air. He fixes the soaked sponge to the end of a hyssop stalk and lifts it to the swollen, cracked lips of the king. The hyssop stalk is not a random detail recorded by a distracted historian. It is the exact same plant the Israelites used 1,500 years of atoms in the known universe. Jesus of Nazareth fulfilled over 300. But if you look closer at the ancient languages, at the way, earlier to smear the blood of the Passover lamb on the doorposts of their houses in Egypt, everything is tying together. The ancient threads violently, snapping into place. When Jesus says he is thirsty, he is actively pulling the final prophetic thread through the needle. We often treat prophecy as something that simply happened to Jesus, as if he were a passive participant caught in a divine storm. But here, bleeding and suffocating, he is the one commanding the timeline. He orchestrates the final fulfillment from a place of supreme physical weakness, demanding the vinegar to ensure every single drop of the prophetic mold is filled. This request for a drink was not a desperate plea for physical relief. It was the deliberate turning of the final key in the lock of the Old Testament. He tastes the sour wine, receiving the very last provision the ancient scrolls required, and then he utters one final word in Greek, tetelestai. It is finished. The vessel is completely full. The debt is paid. His head falls heavily against his chest, and his lungs stop fighting for the wind. The religious leaders think they have finally silenced the Zera, the seed that has haunted their authority, trusting that a dead man cannot claim a throne. But the story of the promised seed does not end with a corpse on a piece of wood, because what happens 3 days later is what the entire cosmos has been groaning for since the gates of Eden were closed. The original authors actually wrote, "At what happens in the dirt and the blood of the New Testament, you start to see something the mathematical. A curse was spoken in a garden, and a single seed was planted to crush a serpent's head. An emperor ordered a global census, and a young girl was pushed into the exact coordinate of a 700-year-old promise. A corrupt priesthood weighed out 30 silver coins and unknowingly bought a graveyard exactly as the prophet saw. A poet king wrote a song of pierced hands, and the heavy, metallic thud of a Roman hammer made the ancient lyrics bleed. 4 soldiers rolled dice in the white dust, and a millennium-old execution prophecy fell directly into their laps. A dying man gasped for a drink, and the sour wine of a desperate psalm was lifted to his lips on a Passover stalk. The sky went black over a wooden beam, and the empty vessels of the entire Old Testament were finally, violently filled. One seed, one timeline, one perfectly kept promise. But maybe the part that stays with me most is that single Greek word Matthew chose, plerou, to fill a hollow vessel. He didn't just walk through history checking boxes on a cosmic clipboard to prove an intellectual point. He poured his very life into the most agonizing shapes the prophets could draw. Knowing the vessel would completely break him, reading completely misses. Prophecy is not a checklist of random future events. It is the blueprint of a rescue mission. Written in plain sight, prophecy is not a list of ancient predictions to marvel at. It is the proof of an active, relentless presence. If you are in a season where your life feels entirely out of control, where the pain feels random and the silence of God feels permanent, look at the staggering precision of the cross. the God who tracks a single seed through 4,000 years of war, famine, and empire, is not improvising your life. He does not abandon the timeline just because the sky goes dark. He maps the trauma. He tracks the grief, and he holds every piece of your shattered vessel in his hands. And may the God who orchestrated empires just to keep his promise to you walk with you through your own dark garden and remind you that he has already carried the deepest weight of your pain behind the Judean hills, stretching their shadows long across the fractured stone. They are walking away from a graveyard. Just 3 days ago, they thought, to understand how heavy this really is, you cannot start at the cross. You have to go back to the very first fracture in human history, before there was a nation of Israel, before there was a tabernacle in the wilderness, before a single law was carved into stone. You have to go back to a garden, an exile, and a single Hebrew word that set a 4,000-year countdown in motion. The air in the garden is suddenly cold. The first humans stand trembling, clutching the skins of dead animals, the metallic smell of fresh blood rising from the soil. A cherubim draws a flaming sword. The gates of Eden are about to slam shut forever. But right here, in the middle of the curse, God speaks a sentence to the serpent. Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel. Scholars call it the Protevangelium, the first gospel. It is a declaration of war. But to feel the weight of what is actually being promised, you have to look at the Hebrew word translated as offspring. It is the Hebrew zerah. It literally translates to seed, like a physical seed buried in the dirt, like the biological lineage of a family. And the grammar of this word is brilliant. They were following a king who would shatter the iron teeth of the Roman Empire. Now, they are fleeing from an execution squad. Zerah is a collective noun. It works like the English word sheep or furniture. It can refer to a massive, in plural multitude, an entire nation of descendants. But it can also point to a singular, specific individual. One seed, one son. For centuries, the ancient rabbis debated this verse. Would the serpent be crushed by a collective nation? Or would the enemy be unmade by a single coming king? The rest of the Old Testament is a relentless, obsessive tracking of this one seed. The seed moves to Abraham. It travels to Isaac. It passes to Jacob, who steals a birthright while his blind father feels the rough goat hair on his arms. It narrows down to the tribe of Judah. The bloodline is threatened in Egypt, crushed under the weight of mud bricks and the sting of Pharaoh's whips. The seed survives the Red Sea. It survives the 40 years of wandering, the burning sand, the venomous snakes. A scarlet cord hangs from a window in Jericho to protect the seed. A shepherd boy swings a stone at a giant to keep the seed alive. Queen Athaliah murders the royal children, leaving blood on the palace floor. But one infant is hidden in the temple to preserve the line. The Babylonians burn Jerusalem to ash, but the seed goes into exile and returns. Every war, every famine, every massacre ordered by a panicked king is a frantic attempt by the serpent to sever the bloodline before the heel can come down. Their chests tight, with a grief so heavy you can feel it in your jaw. A stranger steps onto the path. The Old Testament genealogies are not boring lists of dead ancestors. They are the tactical tracking of the Zerah moving through enemy territory. The seed survives. It survives the silence of the prophets. It survives the rise of Rome, the heavy boots of the legionnaires, the taxation that forces a pregnant teenager onto the road. It arrives in a town so small, the Roman census barely bothered to count it. And there, a specific prophet's warning, written 700 years earlier, snaps into violent focus. A pregnant woman shifts her weight in the cold Judean night. The smell of wood smoke and packed animal dung heavy in the air. The town is suffocatingly full. Dogs bark in the narrow alleys. And Roman soldiers, their armor clanking against stone walls, push through the exhausted crowds of travelers who have come to register for the empire's census. Mary and Joseph are standing in Bethlehem, surrounded by the chaos of a displaced population. 700 years before this exact night. The prophet Micah unrolls a parchment. He is living in a time of severe political terror, watching the Assyrian war machine brutalize the northern tribes of Israel. Amidst the threats of invasion and the collapse of the monarchy, Micah dips his reed pen in ink and writes a single, hyper-specific geographic coordinate. But you, Bethlehem Ephratah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you. He falls into step beside them, the rhythm of his walking matching their exhausted pace. He asks them why their faces are downcast. Will come for me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from of old. From ancient times, the inclusion of the word Ephrathah is a masterclass in prophetic precision. There were actually two towns named Bethlehem in ancient Israel. One sat in the northern territory of Zebulun, while the other rested in the southern hills near Jerusalem. Micah does not just name a city. He provides the ancient equivalent of a zip code, specifying the exact stretch of grazing land where King David was born centuries prior, the exact soil where the patriarch Jacob buried his beloved Rachel, in the dust. But Mary and Joseph do not live in Bethlehem. They live in Nazareth, a brutal 90-mile walk to the north over unforgiving terrain. To get this specific teenager to this specific coordinate at the exact moment she is ready to give birth requires the mobilization of an entire empire. Caesar Augustus, sitting on a marble throne in Rome, issues a sweeping decree to tax the known world. He thinks he is assessing his vast wealth and solidifying his dominion over the Mediterranean. The Roman census is not a display of imperial authority. It is the unwitting mechanism of divine precision. Augustus moves the entire geopolitical chessboard just to force a carpenter and his bride down the Jordan Valley, bringing the Zerah, the promised seed, directly into the prophesied cradle. The infant takes his first gasp of cold air, lying on the rough straw of a feeding trough, precisely where Micah said he would be. They tell him about the prophet from Nazareth, the rough wood, the nails, the women who came running from a tomb at dawn raving about. The coordinate is met. But years later, when a former tax collector named Matthew sits down to write the biography of this child, he does not simply say, "The prophecy came true." He uses a specific Greek word to describe the mechanics of fulfillment, a word that completely dismantles how we understand the ancient prophets. Matthew, the former tax collector, sits at a wooden table in the 1st century, his fingers stained with dark ink. He is writing his gospel for a Jewish audience. People who know the Torah, people who have memorized the Psalms, people who have spent their entire lives waiting for the Zerah, the promised seed, to arrive. Over and over in his account, Matthew writes a variation of the exact same phrase. All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet. Matthew chapter 1, verse 21. The English translation makes it sound like a math equation, like a legal contract being executed, like a checklist being aggressively ticked off. But the word Matthew uses is the Greek plerou. It is a word of volume, not of logic. Plerou literally means to fill a hollow vessel, to load a wooden ship with cargo until it sits heavy in the water, to cram a woven net so full of silver fish that the rough ropes begin to snap under the tension, a vision of angels. And then, the stranger does something completely unexpected. He does not immediately show them his pierced wrists. It is the exact same word Jesus uses in the Sermon on the Mount when he says, "I have not come to abolish the law or the prophets, but to fulfill them, to plerou them." If seeing the biblical text light up like this is stirring something inside you, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week, we dig deeper into these ancient words than you knew was possible. So Matthew looks at the ancient scrolls and sees the cargo being loaded. This route changes everything about how we read the Hebrew Bible. The Old Testament is not a list of psychic predictions waiting for a match. It is a gallery of hollow shapes. The Exodus from Egypt is a hollow shape. The bronze serpent lifted in the desert is a hollow shape. The temple sacrifices. The thick smoke of incense. The hot blood splashed against the bronze altar They are all empty vessels. They were always waiting for the water. They were always waiting for the wait. Prophecy is not a checklist Jesus ticked off. It is the mold he poured his very life into. He fills the shape of the Bethlehem birth. He fills the shape of the flight to Egypt. But there is one mold in the scrolls of Isaiah so violent, so devastating, that for centuries, he does not pull back his cloak to reveal his identity to comfort them. He starts quoting scripture. Beginning with Moses and all the prophets, the religious scholars could not agree on who it was meant to hold. And to fill it, the seed has to walk directly into the hands of the people trying to kill him. He walks into Jerusalem. The crowd tears palm branches from the trees. The green leaves crush under the weight of a donkey's hooves. The white dust coats the hem of his robe. They shout, "Hosanna!" They want a warrior. They want a political revolutionary. They want the Roman eagle dragged through the mud. They want a king on a war horse with a sword in his hand. But 700 years earlier, Isaiah unrolled a different blueprint. Isaiah chapter 53. It is the most fiercely debated text in the ancient synagogues. For centuries, religious scholars argued over the identity of the suffering servant. Is it the entire nation of Israel? Is it the prophet himself? Is it a poetic metaphor for the Babylonian exile? The words are too specific. The violence is too intimate. He grew up like a root out of dry ground. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him. He was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of sorrows and familiar with pain. Jesus does not just quote Isaiah. He wears him. He explains to them what was said in all the ancient texts concerning himself. He rebuilds the entire architecture of the Hebrew scroll right there. He steps into the temple courtyard. He smells the heavy, metallic scent of animal blood mixing with wood ash. He hears the frantic bleating of thousands of Passover lambs waiting for the bronze knife. He knows he is the final lamb. He feels the rough wood of the table in the upper room. He breaks the unleavened bread. Hearing the crisp snap in his hands, he pours the dark wine into the cup. He is actively stepping into the hollow shape. The prophet said he would be led to the slaughter. The prophet said he would remain silent before his shearers. The prophet said the punishment that brought us peace would be laid directly upon his back. Every step toward the Garden of Gethsemane is a step into the mold. Every heartbeat is a countdown. The religious leaders watch him from the shadows of the colonnades. They plot in furious whispers. They cannot arrest him in the daylight. The crowds are too volatile. The tension in the city is too fragile. They need the cover of darkness. They need an informant on the inside. They need a transaction. Isaiah 53 is not a poetic metaphor for political struggle. It is a forensic autopsy written before the victim even stopped breathing. It demands a shattered body. But Isaiah does not name the price of the betrayal. To find the exact cost of the King of Kings.